Welcome back, guys. This is another isometric video. Now, the item I've picked today is a nice retro games console controller. The reason I've picked this item is because it has a lot of circles. Okay, so there's an inner circle there, these circles, and obviously the buttons themselves. Reason being, circles are the hardest thing, I think, the hardest thing to draw in isometric because, and I say this, if you look at it that way, it looks very different than if you're looking at it from an angle that way, okay? I'm trying to line that up. So you need to make sure when you do one, obviously the others need to match up. All four of these buttons need to be the same. It would be no good if one is, you know, almost like an egg shape and the other one is almost too circular. It can be too circular because you're looking at it straight on. It should be more like an oval, like so. So I'd like you to select an item around the house. It could be a games controller like this, but it could be something else, something with lots of circular shapes within it. Okay, so this is my finished one, but I'm going to start from the beginning as if I'm working fresh. So I keep saying it, but the first thing I want people to do is I want you to box out your shape. Doesn't matter what you are drawing, anything can start off in a box and then you break it out into the key shapes. Now, again, I've done my tick, I've done my crow's foot, done my garden fork, and then I've finished off the box. But in this instance as well, I've drawn the line down the very middle. So I've measured that and I found the very middle point. And then I've done a line to the left and to the right, okay? Probably around 1 centimetre. And if we look at this games controller, I don't focus, it's not focusing very well. I don't know if you can see that. I've drawn these lines onto this controller and I've drawn these circles as well. That isn't focusing very well. Hopefully you can see that. So again, I don't want you to be doing that on yours, but I thought I would just do that just to kind of show you as a guide. So I know the very middle is there, and then that line and that line, effectively that's where my circle, if this was a complete circle, which it isn't, that's where that circle should end effectively. And on this side, that's where this circle should end. Okay, so here and here. I've got one where I haven't drawn the lines as well. So box off your areas that are relevant to you. And then again, like I've done before, I mark 4 points. So if I'm trying to draw a circle like that, it's a lot easier. If I'm drawing, I'm only connecting that to that, aren't I? So it's a lot easier for me to break that down and I'm only thinking about that part of the circle there. I could do the same here, you'd imagine. Again, if you're not sure, I'm doing it by eye, but you reckon that's quite an incline, quite the curve there, isn't it? When you're looking from this angle. So it would be coming around like that, okay? In fact, just to save a bit of time, I've drawn those out, okay? So I've drawn to there, and then I've gone all the way up to the middle. So where's the one where I've marked? I've gone all the way effectively to this point here, and I've gone all the way to this point here. The very middle, if you measure that line, the very middle point, even though I don't need to, but just because it then will actually help me drawing this circle out as well, because I know it's slightly inside. So I draw that, knowing that I can rub some of that line away, okay? So that's that. I've also put those points there and there, because if you look, that curve, where that curve starts, it would also start there as well. So you would imagine, and I'm not at this stage yet, but this curve would be like this, wouldn't it? And again, I say this, but that measurement there would be the same as if you had a measurement here. Okay, the only slight difference is it will start to curve in there. But so just to save a bit of time, there's the next step. And what I've done is, just as I said, I used that line as my guide. This measurement, this measurement, this measurement should always be the same because, as you can see, there's an equal gap. And then I have completed that all the way along. I've done the same for this circle here. So there's a little circle inside the directional pad. So I've basically measured, okay, how much in is that? It is around there, it is around there. So therefore I can do my 4 points again. If you wish, you can do a box. I'm drawing this not as neat as I could do because for time, and then we draw our circle in, okay? And you notice now, I could probably rub that line out and rub that line out. I don't need it because I've drawn this straight edge in. That's that. Okay, then I'm tackling the top part. So as I always say, it's like a puzzle, isn't it? What do I know? What can I actually solve? Well, I can finish that curve off and then I know I could do that line. These buttons, I'm not sure how I would tackle those yet. Okay, so do the bits you can tackle, and it's almost like I think it's like a Sudoku puzzle. Do the parts you know, and then the other parts fall into place. So I know I can draw that line, I can draw that line. Okay, then maybe I could just start plotting out parts inside this circle. Okay, so if you were to put a cross there, inside this grey circle, if I was to put a cross, that button would fall right in the middle of that cross, and this button would fall right in the middle. Okay, so if we connect those up lightly, okay, I would probably put a cross like that, and I would put a cross here. Okay, then I'd think, okay, I can probably rub out the lines I don't need. I can probably think, okay, that curve there, I'm starting to problem solve, so that's probably the same. These now, if I have done that, I probably will finish that off and I'll rub out any lines I don't need, but I'll keep the cross because I know I still need that for reference. And I've kept the middle line because, for instance, that's where the cable comes out, so that's handy to have, and it is a good point of reference. So I'll probably also plot in now, what would I do next? I'll probably think, okay, well, how much of a gap from there to there? So I'd say, okay, probably it's there. I'll do the same four times. How much of a gap? I'd put it there. And I'll probably do the same with the directional pad. So I'll probably say, okay, it's that much of a space, that much of a space. Remember, I'm going to keep saying this, these lines are going that way. The D-pad wouldn't look like this straight on. It would if we're looking at it that way. Obviously it won't when it's that way. These circles are going to, if I draw it roughly, you would probably put a little box, but the circles would be like that, and then of course they protrude out, so they would look like that. They won't be a complete circle, they will be, let's do it there, almost more of an oval. All right, so plot my shapes out, and probably I could plot this area out. Now, what I found useful is because these diagonal lines, that might confuse matters, but I plotted out, okay, well, where are the 4 pieces of text, the 4 labels for the buttons, turbo, clear, select, start. Let's plot those out, and then I can put the buttons around them. So I probably think, well, there's the middle. Okay, there's the middle line would be there. So where would they plot out? And that turbo is probably just a little bit higher than where this D-pad would be. Imagine the D-pad is there. So that's just a little bit higher, isn't it? So let's plot that out. It's probably there. And clear is probably a little bit higher than where that green button would be. So probably that text would be around there. Select start, that's probably level with the bottom part of that D-pad, actually just a little bit lower. So I would plot that out down here as well. In fact, that's what I've done. So I've got my 4 points, I've kept my cross, and I've drawn in my directional pad. Now, I probably would make 4 little mini boxes, because that way you can make sure, okay, well, if they all fit in those boxes, I've got that line a bit off actually. Remember, make sure these line up. Make sure these line up. Okay, I'm doing that very quickly. You know then, your 4 circles, if you do them correctly, your 4 buttons, they will be the same size because they've all fit in the same box that you've made. Okay, so you've done the framework, so you know you can't really go wrong. The D-pad as well, it does stick out a little bit. It protrudes out. So of course, you add that in, don't you? You make it 3D. So it is almost like when we look at our isometric sheet that we did, isometric lesson 1 that I filmed, where we had lots of little tasks. Imagine those little tasks are kind of built in to this project, okay? That would be a task. These buttons would be a task. This text, okay? So it's lots of little mini activities. So, to save time, I've written these 4 words in, and I've drawn my D-pad. So there's my D-pad. I haven't drawn my circles in yet. I would probably do those next. I would draw those in. You've seen me do that before, so I don't need to do that. These diagonal lines don't really follow the isometric guide. They're going off on a different trajectory, a different angle, aren't they? So what I did was I pretty much did it by eye. I looked at this and I thought, okay, let's say that it starts, ironically, using the start button, starts there and probably ends, I'm looking at the R on the clear, just a little bit lower. So I do a point there. The turbo, the O, there, I would put a point, and the S of select, probably there. And then I'll probably just draw 2 lines in, okay? I can draw my buttons around that, okay? So I've got those lines. And then again, these ones will be easier. You could just draw a straight line. And it's probably the L of clear, and just before the R, and then maybe the B of the turbo, and the U of the turbo, okay? And then I'd rub out the lines I don't need. I'll just put these on top. Then I'll start tackling the L and R buttons on the top, these ones. Okay, so I've done that. I've drawn my circles out. I've got my guide. I also put a circle in there because there is a bit of an indentation. So I think to myself, okay, well, these L and R, they're closer to this edge. They're not in the very middle. They're actually closer here, I guess, for placement, ergonomics. It's more comfortable to hold if the buttons are there than if they were further back. Yeah, they are actually. So I've drawn those in. Now, I've just done almost like a box, but I haven't finished it off. And then you'd think to yourself, okay, well, that follows that curve around, doesn't it? And that follows that curve around. This would follow this curve around. And I've put a kind of a line there where I think then this curve begins. So that line would be there effectively, this line. Then I'd have to put a curve in. So that's that. These buttons, I've then drawn like this. I've drawn around it and I've made them 3D. Okay, I've done that for all 4 of those buttons and I've made these 3D. Okay, like so. What do we need to do next? So these buttons are elevated, aren't they? They stick out. If we can see that. They stick out like so. So I need mine to stick out. So there'd be probably that much, wouldn't they? Maybe that's a bit too much, but you get the idea. But, you know, they stick out about that much. And of course, I'm putting this curve in now, so I'm going to just do that by eye. Like so. And then that would stick out like that. There is a bit of a curve here as well. And you probably wouldn't see the back of that because it's hidden, isn't it? If it was see-through, it would be like that. If it was a clear piece of plastic. So that's that. We've got that there. Okay, and then, so that's pretty much done. I've labelled the 4 buttons. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll rub out any lines I don't need. And then I do thick and thin line technique. So this was my final drawing. Okay, so I use thick and thin line technique, which is, just to recap, is on the very outer edges, like so. We do this and it kind of makes the picture, brings the picture to life, doesn't it? It brings it out the page. That's it. Try and pick an object with lots and lots of circles. A gamepad, a retro one, the newer ones, maybe the PlayStation or Xbox one might not have quite as many. But if you've got one like this knocking around at home, or something similar with lots of circles, give it a go, because that is the hardest part, in my opinion, of isometric. Okay, best of luck, guys, and I'll speak to you again soon.